guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be covering some questions off the ACT. Now we're going to focus fire specific questions about FOIL, factoring, and any type of question related to that content. So go ahead and stick with me because we're going to go ahead and jump right into the questions for today.
So in this case, we're looking for vertical asymptotes for this graph, this function. So if you didn't know, a vertical asymptote is essentially where the graph does not run into a vertical line, a straight up and down. So usually this occurs when you have a fraction for your function, and it occurs when the bottom is equal to 0. So a lot of times you'll take the bottom, you'll set it equal to 0, make sure things don't factor out, stuff like that. In this case, this should be very visual that there is an asymptote at x equals 0, but also that would be when the bottom was equal to 0. So our answer here is going to be f. X equal to 0 creates this vertical asymptote where the graph won't touch. For number 17, they say they want you to find out which value of x would make this true. This is just a fancy way of saying solve for x. There's lots of different ways you can do it. I'm going to do the cross multiply and divide method here, which is where we're going to essentially multiply this to this side and multiply the bottom of this fraction to this side. Then once they're equal, we can solve for x. So 10 times 42 is 420. The 35 is going to have to be distributed to both things on the bottom over there. So it'd be 35 times 10, which is 350, and 35 times that x, which would just be 35x. Now we do need to subtract this guy from both sides. So once we do that, we would see that we would end up with 70 is equal to 35x. Then I'm going to divide both sides by that 35. And that's going to end up giving me that x is equal to 2, which is answer A. So this is a pretty basic factoring question here. We just need to factor this expression into two terms. So we're going to go ahead and set that up. And we're going to put an x out front for both because we have no number in front of that x squared. Then we need to find two numbers that multiply to the back and add to the middle. So in this case, two numbers that multiply to -6 and add to 5. Now you may jump to thinking 2 and 3 because those multiply to 6 and add to 5, but because of this negative, that's going to end up making the signs funky and not be able to give us this 5. So our actual answer here is going to be a +6 and a -1 because multiplied together, that gives us -6, added together, that gives us the +5. So that's going to be answer K. So number 16 says, what's the sum of the two solutions of this equation? Now there's actually two ways to do this. One is the long way of actually factoring this out and then setting both of those factors equal to 0 and solving. There's also a little trick that says the sum of the two solutions is always going to be -b divided by a. So what does it mean by a and b? Well, a is the number in front of the first term, b is the number in front of the second term, and c is the last term over here. So in this case, -b over a would be equal to -3 over 1, which is going to be answer H. So we got a plug and chug here where we have to plug in the 1/2 in for x here and then find out what the solution is. So let's go ahead and plug this in. 1 over 2 raised to the third power right here means that we would do the top 1 times 1 times 1, which is still 1, and the bottom would be 2 times 2 times 2 because it's cubed, and that would be 8. Now we still have that plus 5 over 8 there, divided by, we're going to put 1/2 on the bottom. Now, because this number has a 4 and I'm adding them, I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this in terms of a 4 on the bottom, which is going to be 2 over 4, which is still 1/2. So 2 over 4 plus 1 over 4. Now, if we go through here, this would give me 6 over 8 when I add those two across, and this one down here is going to give me 3 over 4. Now, I do recognize that if I divide both the top and bottom by 2 right here, I can reduce this fraction to 3 over 4. So in reality, we have 3 over 4 over 3 over 4, which is equal to 1. Answer B. I know this question looks like a simple plug and chug, but it's actually much quicker if you're able to do a little bit of factoring in your head. If you notice right off the bat that up here there's an x in this term and this term, you can pull an x out, making this x times x plus 2. Now, if that's the case, then you have an x plus 2 over x plus 2, so these two will actually just end up being 1. So really, we have x times 1 is equal to 2. So then what would make this equation true? Well, we just need 2 equal to 2, so that means x must be equal to 2, which is k. Now, obviously, that would go much quicker in your head if you were able to identify that. I want to treat this one a little bit like a factoring question. So it says, for what value n does this quadratic equation have the solutions x equals 4 and x equals negative 2? So if it has the solutions 4 and negative 2, that means that it probably broke down into x minus 4 and x plus 2, and then when you set those equal to 0, you get those two responses. Well, if we go backwards from here, then that just means we need to multiply these two together to get this number and add them together to get this number. Indeed, negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2, but what's negative 4 times 2? That's going to give us negative 8. So n should be negative 8, which is answer F. I hope you've been watching because we're going to use the same trick that we did the other day, which is if you need to find the sum of two solutions of an equation like this where you would typically factor, you can just do negative b over a. In this case, the b is the 3, a is 1, so that means that our answer here is going to be negative 3 over 1, which is also just negative 3. So our answer is C. Another plug and chug question here. It says we're plugging negative 3 into this equation up here for x. So first off, negative 3 squared is going to give us a positive 9. Negative times negative times that 2 is 18. Then we have minus 3 times the negative 3. With a negative and the negative here are going to multiply together to give us positive. 3 times 3 is going to be 9. So we have 18 plus 9, which is 27. So our answer here is K. So this one's not too bad. It's saying that if we were to plug 2 into these equations here, which one would possibly give us 5 as an answer? So let's go through these real quick. 2 squared would be 4 plus 1 would be 5. So that one looks like it's going to work. 2 squared would be 4 minus 1 would end up giving us 3. Then we got 2 plus 4, which is 6. We have 2 minus 3, which is negative 1. And we have 2 times 5, which would be 10, plus 2, which would be 12. So out of these, the only option that gives us 5 is answer F.
Well, that's all the questions we're going to cover today, so thanks for joining me. And remember, if you want to see any other test prep type questions, go ahead and check out some of these other videos over here, or keep checking back for some new content. Again, my name is MrCaproni, and thanks for joining me today.